everyone. How are you doing today? So I am wanting to talk a little bit about the nervous system today because I noticed that there's been a wide array of responses to the sort of pandemic situation that's going on right now. And I realized that I've been using some tools for myself that have been really helpful. There are some things that I have learned because of the work that I've been doing as a professional cuddler and really working with people in their nervous systems, that it feels like I've been sitting on this treasure trove of information that I've just sort of taken for granted. And I feel a little shy talking about it because it seems like everyone that I work with knows everything about it, the Polyvagal Theory. Like, there's so many books and so many therapists talking about it. But I also live in like one really small corner of the world, and I realize that many of you may not even have heard about it or don't think about it in this way. So this is my attempt at sharing some of the resources that I have. And the thing that I'm going to introduce you today is called the Polyvagal Theory. And there's going to be some big words, and I'm trying to introduce you to the terminology so that you can look it up or be able to talk about it intelligently in the way that it's been created. And also, it really matters to me that this is like grounded and simple and applicable. So if you notice yourself like confused about something, ask me a question in the comments. You are totally welcome to just skip ahead and get to the part where I'm going to leave you some like really concrete tools to deal with what's happening right now. So I noticed like there's a really big range of responses to the pandemic. Like, some people, I would include myself in this particular category, are thriving in this time in the way that like we've totally been like called to action and are creative and productive and are doing super well. It's like our nervous systems are like totally fine-tuned to like whatever the situation is right now. At least that feels true for me. And then there's like other people who are really struggling, and they're having this really strange experience, maybe new to them, or maybe a familiar one, of not even being able to do the most simple tasks, like checking email. Getting out of bed feels like it takes so much effort and energy. And then there's other people who are just like anxious and high-strung and just not okay in that way. And then other people who are like feeling really calm and safe and like more relaxed than ever. So if you recognize yourself in one of these, I'm going to show you based on this particular psychophysiological framework that I happen to be really familiar with, what is happening in your body while that is happening. And if you can understand that, my hope is that you can have more compassion for yourself and a deeper understanding of what it is that is happening for you so that you can address it directly. So something I want to tell you about the Polyvagal Theory is that it is relatively new. It was discovered by Stephen Porges in 1994. And since then, it has made waves, especially in the therapeutic industry. It has completely changed our understanding of the kind of importance of our nervous system in our social engagement, in the way that we relate to one another in human relationships. So it's brought the nervous system into human relationships, which is really big. It has also deeply informed the way that we address threat, things that don't feel safe, and what it feels like to feel safe. So we kind of understand that a lot more. And we also happen, because of this particular thing, because it deals with safety and threat, we've understood a lot more about trauma and how to resolve trauma and how to address trauma and what causes trauma. So I'm just gonna write down some things. Hopefully you can see it from over there. I'm gonna bring this over here. Maybe bring this a little closer so that it's clear. I realize it's kind of dark. All right, can you see this? Polyvagal, this is how it's spelled, theory. And it's by Stephen Porges. His work is so influential. There's been so many books and so many therapists who are like so excited about this discovery, and it has spurred on so much. So before you can understand why this is so important, I'm going to share with you kind of the original model, and maybe you have heard of this before. So again, I'm going to use some of these big words. If you don't understand them, slow me down, I will help. So in the old system, we are really familiar with what we call the parasympathetic and sympathetic nervous system. I'm going to start with the sympathetic. I really don't want to be writing in all caps the whole way through. And parasympathetic. Can I spell? The parasympathetic nervous system. And you actually already have a relationship with these two parts of the nervous system in your body. So what happens if you want to do this with me right now? If you take a nice deep breath and then you exhale, there are two different processes that we just flipped into. So on the inhale, our sympathetic nervous system kicks on, and that's like an activating, so that's like an up-moving kind of response in our system. And then the parasympathetic is the down leveling. So on the sympathetic nervous system goes up. I like to think of a symphony, just like a lot of instruments. That's how I remember it. And then the parasympathetic, I think of a parachute kind of coming down slowly. Or you can also think of how, like, when you're paralyzed, that's actually, well, sort of like that. That's what it means, right? Immobilization. So on the sympathetic nervous system, your heart rate goes up. Your heart rate increases. It's known for like fight or flight responses. This one, the heart rate goes down. I basically spelled it. All right, and then in this system, we call it rest and digest. You've probably heard of these phrases before, right? Something about the sympathetic nervous system is that the nerves are very short. The nerve endings in the system are short, and so information travels very, very quickly. While this one, the nerve endings are very longer. They're like longer, and so it's like it's slower. It's so. With that in mind, which one do you think is more useful when, or you imagine to be more useful when you're in danger, right? So that was the kind of ideology behind what was happening in our nervous systems before. If you were safe, you were in the parasympathetic, resting and digesting. If you were unsafe, then you would your heart rate would go up and you'd be able to fight or run pretty quickly because that adrenaline is pumping through your system and all that. You don't really want to be slow to respond. I'm checking my notes here to make sure that I don't miss anything because this is like pretty important stuff. Yeah. So again, the sympathetic, it gets kind of kicked on during the inhale, and the parasympathetic gets kicked on during the exhale. All right, so in the old model, we just had these two. It was like, if you're unsafe, you're up here, and then if you're safe, you're down here. But then it didn't explain a lot of the ways that we deal with trauma and the freeze response that we're all really, really familiar with now. So there was like a big limitation to just looking at this like two-part model. So I'm going to share with you a little bit about what it does look like in the Polyvagal Theory. And the most important thing that you need to know is that it's a theory of hierarchy. And the hierarchy is based on how we evolve. So I'm going to do a really poor version, but best version I can, of a brain. You know, a psychology major in school, and I took what was it called? Like psychobiology, or I don't remember what it was called, class. And so I actually know some of these names, but I'm not going to use them here today because that's not really that important. What you want to know is that our brains kind of evolve from the stem up, right? So we've got what some people call the lizard brain, the reptilian brain here. And then you've got some of the emotional centers, or the mammalian brain, or the midbrain. And then the frontal cortex, or the rest of the brain, is used for like higher level processing. So I would call this I call it the primate brain, but I don't know if it's officially called that. But we use it for cognition, problem solving, being able to make like really sound logical decisions, those types of things. This is like the newest part of our brain, so it's like furthest away from the core stuff. Our lizard brain right here is responsible for survival, so just the basic everyday things that you don't want to have to think about. The autonomic nervous system, as it's called. Breathing, heart rate, just like making sure that your system is functioning. It's like basement processes is one of the ways that I've heard it described. The mammal brain is responsible for more emotion, so fear, memory, all of those things kind of happen here in this place. And then like other types of decisions, language and all of that happen everywhere else. So this theory, this polyvagal theory of hierarchy is basically this, that when you are feeling safe, you have access to all of the brain. So you can, all of this are functioning really well. But in times of threat, what happens is your system will prioritize heavily your survival. And so what's going to happen is that these areas, they kind of like downpower. It's like shutting down the sort of non-essential for your survival parts of the brain, and then you get lower and lower down to like where it's very essential for survival. So in this part of the brain, you're able to do math, you're able to do spreadsheets and accounting and maybe show up for your job on time. In this part of the brain, you can do things like feel feelings, and maybe if some part of this brain is online, you can express them, but over here, maybe you can just feel them and act on them. And then down here in this part of the brain, you're basically just breathing, barely. Like if everything is shut down because it's so unsafe, that's where we go. Okay, so I'm gonna draw it out with some words now that you kind of get this idea of the hierarchy. That's a lot of theory, and I promise you it's gonna pay off, because seriously, once you get an understanding of this, it is so cool, and you're gonna be able to track yourself and where you are, and also like have a more clear visual of how you can engage yourself so that you have access to all three parts of your brain, and not just one. Obviously, there's one word that I want you to know about right now. I'm going to teach you this word, neuroreception. It's like inception, but with the brain. It has nothing to do with inception at all. The term neuroreception is just basically describing this process that our nervous system, our brain, our body is doing at any given moment to assess our safety. Like that is one of the primal sort of like tasks of our system, is to keep us safe, right? So our body has these sensors that track whether or not we're safe in any given moment. And what it tracks really is based on our personal history with what was safe before and what wasn't safe for us before. And so we do not, just so we're clear, we do not have any control over this. This is a system that is just automatic, subconscious if you want to call it that way, but we really have no real choice oftentimes in how we react. And what I want to say about that is that you may have noticed that you are behaving maybe differently than you usually do right now in this time of pandemic. It's because your neuroreceptive things are working and is tracking that things are not normal, that's not safe. There's literally an illness that could kill you, possibly, out there. There's financial stress. There is just a lot of things that your system is tracking. So if you notice that like some parts of your brain have been shut down or like are acting differently, you're coming from a survival place, and that totally makes sense. So again, I'm doing this so that you have more compassion for yourself and like a little bit more patience and understanding for what you're doing. Okay, so I'm gonna do the best job that I can describing the things that I've learned. I've had some really good teachers and read some really great books. And if I screw up, I'll correct myself, okay? So social engagement system. This is our ability to talk, to engage with one another. and to be able to show up socially in the world, our smiling, all of that. We've got our social engagement system here. And it's always scanning. It's scanning our environment at any given moment for what's safe and what's not safe. And I'm going to see if I can split it up this way. Sometimes, sometimes we track that there's danger. It's not okay. And sometimes we can track that there's safety. And I'm going to mark safety with blue. Remember in the old system, it was just like there's only danger and there's only safety, and safety is only the parasympathetic and danger is only the sympathetic. Well, throw that out the window. It turns out it's more of like this, more of like a grid, or what is it called? That, can you see the bottom of that? Okay, I might have to move my camera down or whatever later. That's all good. That it's actually split up like this. Danger and safety is on this side of the grid. And there's a way that I'm gonna write this sideways. This was the original system before. This is the sympathetic nervous system. Oh my gosh, I can spell. Which is the up one, right? And then I'm gonna write it this one this way. Then there's the parasympathetic. That goes down this way. That's the down regulating one. Okay? So there is a way that you can be in danger and in the parasympathetic nervous system, and in a way that you're in safety, but you're actually like up and active and activated. And then you can also be safe in the down-regulated way. So we used to think that there were only these two quadrants, but turns out there's more than that. And that's still, it's still simplifying it a lot. So bear with me here. Let's talk about what happens when we scan for danger, like we do right now during COVID-19, right? This is where the fight or flight happens. So basically, we know that it's not safe, and our system, remember the sympathetic nervous system gets kicked up so that we're ready to respond really quickly. And this is like really important. I'm really glad our system can do that, so that in case something happens, we're not going to be frozen. The ideal is that we can act, so we can be mobilized to do something for our safety. So this fight and flight response, maybe you've noticed that you get into a fight, you start to feel defensive, and either you want to run away and not face it, or you like want to beat the other person up. I definitely get either one of those ways, depending on the situation. When danger isn't so bad, like when I'm still kind of like socially engaged, and there is like a slightly smaller version. I wish I had a yellow marker. I don't. Oh, I have an orange one. Where like I can, instead of the fight response, I can, this is like a relative to the fight response, I do some posturing. You ever do that? When you feel like you're not completely in danger, but you don't feel safe. Like when you go to a board meeting and you don't feel completely safe, you like feel like you have to show something so it's like posturing or like competing. Basically, that competitive side of me that just wants to crush other people. I'm still feeling not too dangerous, but like there is some of that activation in mine. And then there's another flight response that is like, can kind of happen up here also in danger, which is the Fawn Response. And if you're familiar with trauma, the Fawn Response is like I don't want to make any trouble, because trouble has been very, very unsafe for me before. So I'm going to be really and just so we're clear, this is not always a choice. I'm going to be just really passive and really keep that smile on my face so that I don't create any any kind of discord at all so that I can feel safe. The fawn response is very, very intense and is often a coping mechanism for many of us who've been survivors of big trauma. So those are just 2 little tidbits that you may know about. Okay, so what happens if you're in fight or flight, and then the danger doesn't go away? If the danger doesn't go away, then it's trying to prioritize your survival. So it will turn everything off and just focus on surviving. Breathing, heartbeat, breathing, heartbeat. It's like a mechanism of conserving energy. And then here you have a collapse. You can see this in rodents. I don't know if you've ever seen that, like little mice and stuff like that, when they really think that they're gonna die, that they just fall over. And they're still alive. You can faint, right? They're still breathing, but they're not fighting, they're not running away. They've like played dead. This is like our system's version of doing that. And then there's also the freeze, which the way that I was introduced to it, a lot of people talk about fight and flight being here and freeze being down here. The way I've been introduced to freeze is that it actually kind of happens here in the middle, where if fight or flight is like the gas pedal and the collapse is the brake, the freeze happens when both of them are activated at the same time. So you are like aware and in this like heightened hypervigilant state. This can sometimes happen if you are in a danger state. You suddenly can notice every little detail about everything. And then the collapse is when the sort of system shuts off and you get stuck between the two, and it's a really awful place to be. And a lot of times people who have found themselves in safe spaces, like in terms of like sexual unsafety and things like that, a lot of people can really judge themselves harshly for being here because it feels like they have a choice, like they are aware of everything that's going on, and then they can't act because their body is literally frozen. Like the body took energy away from being able to mobilize. And so a lot of people kind of are mad at themselves when they're here. So we'll talk about safety in a little bit. And what that can look like. But I'm wanting to relate it to what you might be experiencing. Obviously, we're using very large examples of trauma here when I talk about that. And I want to like ground that a little bit in what that might look for you. Maybe you're dealing with anxiety. And that's like a mid-tier kind of sympathetic response. Like there's more adrenaline in your system, there's more cortisol, these basically stress hormones that help you deal with stress. And for the record, these are good things. Cortisol and adrenaline are things that you want to be able to deal with a tough situation. The problem is when your neuroreception picks up that it's constantly a threat and the threat is not going away, because the pandemic obviously hasn't ended and it's still going on. Your nervous system feels like, oh, but I need to keep this up to be able to, you're like, I got to deal with this. I want to do something about it. And that can kind of burn you out. So that makes it so that you never can be over here in the place of safety and rest, and you're probably not getting very good sleep. And have you noticed that when you're here, or maybe even when you're here, which can be like depression, that you try to talk yourself out of it. You're like, what's wrong with you? I'm totally okay. I have an income still, or I have a hope of getting income. I have a roof over my head. Other people are suffering more. Snap out of it. You ever try to talk yourself out of it that way? Guess what? It doesn't work. And because this is a bodily response, it doesn't respond to logic. It doesn't respond to language. It responds in a physical way to threat. And oftentimes, when our body is shut down, remember this part of our brain kind of can't engage. So you're not going to be able to drive this part of you from all the way over here. It's just like too big of a leap. So depression is my sort of default coping. I've had and I'm not experiencing it right now, but this is where I often struggle with my nervous system, is that when there is stress, my tolerance level for it is very small. I have a very small window of tolerance for it, and then I shut down, and then all of a sudden I can't get out of bed for 6 months. Like that's a thing that happens to me. And it's very, very scary, because during those times I have like very little control. I just feel stuck and frozen, and it's very, very, very scary for me. I don't know personally anxiety very well, but I know many, many of you do. My husband has like a different nervous system from me, so he tends to be up here and I tend to be down here. And it's a different challenge, basically. So where are you in this pandemic time right now? Are you here like kind of sensing danger, or are you here kind of in the safety zone? We'll explore what the safety zone looks like and what wellness could look like for you, and how we can shift from these quadrants out into the ones that are a little bit more yummy. So let's explore what safety in this social engagement system looks like. So here we have like tend and befriend. Have you heard this term before? When we are feeling safe and happy and our entire system is online, have you noticed that you're just like a really cool dude when you're just feeling safe? Like all of a sudden you're funny, you're focused, you're productive, you're so easy to hang around, you're like telling jokes. That's me when I'm feeling safe. And when I'm not feeling safe, I'm like awkward and wondering what people are thinking about me and like trying to do things. So safety in the social engagement system is really natural, and you don't have to learn it. It's just a physiological state. So as long as you can figure out how to soothe your system into safety, not by talking to it, but by actually dealing with this part of your body, it's really interesting how those like social skills can just happen. It's really neat. Okay, safety in the sympathetic system. So safety when we're like up, like active. Active safety looks like what? Play for me. Dancing. Productivity. Creativity. How have I seen this one? It's like create and mate. Sex. Oftentimes the sex drive comes from this here, the safety and like, wow, I'm just like safe and I want to have fun and I want to do things. So that's what safety can look like when your nervous system is like kind of active and safe and creative. I really, really like it here. This is like my favorite place to hang out. And I get so judgmental of myself when I'm not here and when I'm here instead. And it's just normal. This is like just a normal part of our lives and dealing with what's in our environment. So I'm wanting to make sure that you can see it. What does safety look like in the parasympathetic place? Oh, this is one of my favorite things ever, actually. This looks like meditation. Rest and digest. It looks like, that sort of like state that you're in before sleep. Peacefulness. So something about the rest and digest, right? It kind of happens, notice like sex drive, rest and digesting, sort of happens like in the lower part of the body here. Oftentimes when we're in fight or flight, right? Or freeze, it's so focused on like our heart rate and our breathing that you notice that if you're here all the time that you will have a lot of digestive issues. So you might not be regularly going to the bathroom. You might have a lot of GI issues. People who live with trauma oftentimes have sort of a lot of inflammation in their system because it's so activated all the time, and it can create autoimmune disease. So oftentimes trauma is one of the reasons why many of us struggle with health issues. Okay, Anyway, I took a long time describing this polyvagal system. Essentially, this idea that there's a hierarchy to how our body, our nervous system deals with threat. So when there's danger, we're gonna like slowly move down until, and if it continues and continues, we're gonna like end up over here. So the thing about being in these different states is this. When we are safe, we have access to all three, and it becomes very easy to switch from tending and befriending to being creative and productive to resting. There's like flexibility in our system. We can shift from the sympathetic to the parasympathetic, back and forth, and there's ease. And even in times of danger, we activate ourselves, but then we can find a way to like calm down and feel safe again. So that's what a resilient system looks like. It can handle sort of the stress of danger because it can always come back to safety again. So that's the ideal state that we want to be in. And some of us were lucky because we've been in a lot of different types of environments where we were able to always find safety again. And some of us were less lucky. So we're sort of like primed for danger all the time. And that's okay, that's normal. Like that's your system protecting you. So when you're in this sort of healthy state or wellness state, I wouldn't say it's healthy or unhealthy, the state of feeling safety, you can just like travel between one another. However, when you're here on the unsafe side, most of the time it's kind of like you can't go from collapse. You can travel generally between all of these states. You can feel safe all of a sudden, and all of a sudden something feels unsafe, and then you're like in one of these quadrants. So most of the time you can move from one to the other. The only thing you can't do, that I started to learn, is you cannot go from collapse and complete shutdown into safety. That is not possible. There is like no way through that wall over there. No way through. So none. There's just no way that you can go from being a complete frozen state to suddenly peaceful and meditative. Like over here is like when you're cuddling and there's oxytocin flowing and vasopressin and like all of the good stuff. You can't do it from here. So there's a word that I want to introduce you to, which is called regulation. So it's just calibration, really. The idea of regulating is that we want our nervous systems to be able to go from threat and danger into safety. And that's it. Like, that's all it is learning how to do that, to shift from this feeling of like, oh, things are not okay, or like, there's no hope in the world, to be able to feel, not just think, but feel in our bodies freedom and wellness and wholeness. And in order for me to do it from a place of depression, because I can't just all of a sudden be sad and meditate. I remember when I was grieving, meditation was not the thing to do. You need to go up this way. You can go up here, or you can go up here. So you can, to fight depression, you can get really angry, punch it out, go running, like exercise, something like that, play or dance, some way to like unfreeze the thing that is stuck and like wake up your system so that you can like have more freedom to move around again. If you are feeling like danger, anxiety, then obviously the thing that we're trying to do is to get you over here to this peaceful place, but you still need to like move through that sort of fight and flight response. So for me, the thing that I have learned, and I'm by no means an expert, is that there are a few things that really, really help regulation. And this is the part where I'm like talking about tools. I don't even know how many minutes in we are anymore, but for me, I have been noticing that I've been accidentally regulating my nervous system during this time. Here's a few things that help. One of our ways of finding safety is by engaging with other people. Connection is like especially important during this time. And this concept is called co-regulation. When you were a baby, you did not have regulation skills. You're still like a new nervous system and trying to figure things out. So we're like these little tuning forks in some way. Like we're vibrating at a certain frequency, and when we meet somebody else, we can sort of impact each other in the frequency that we're at. So cuddling and touch is like really, really, really important for finding safety, especially if you have an experience of safety with another human. That's why cuddling your pets, having a hug from another person, especially a person who feels safe and has like a nervous system that is calm and safe and has a lot of wellness in it, can help a lot. Now, I know that's probably not always accessible for you during this time, but that sort of explains why hugging can help. But hugging is not the only way, touch is not the only way to be able to access co-regulation. Another way is through the face. The face and the nervous is part of our social engagement system. So I want to ask you, like, when was the last time that somebody looked at you in the eyes, which is like a big part of that. It kind of goes straight to the heart, sometimes it feels like, and smiled at you. When was the last time that had happened? So that really helps, just like being acknowledged, being smiled at. That is one of the sensors for safety that can happen. So make sure that you're having some FaceTime with at least one other person every day. That often helps. Another thing that can help you co-regulate is to move together with another person. So mirroring triggers our sense of empathy and our sense of connection. So like in my online calls, we do so much mirroring of like I'm waving and now you're waving too, and I'm going to lead and now you're going to follow. Those are fun things that you can do to engage your bodies and also like build, sort of like tune up your nervous systems together so that you're like in sync. There's something really cool about doing that. So FaceTime, contact. Okay. The other thing, this really cool tool about the polyvagal system, why it's called polyvagal, because it has to do with the vagus nerve. The vagus nerve is the 10th cranial nerve that goes from your brainstem all the way down to your genitals. It's a very, very long, it goes right, like it's literally the connection between your brain, your heart, your gut, and your sexuality, like right there, one nerve called the vagus nerve. And it is a parasympathetic tool. So if you want to get here to this place of meditation, peacefulness, rest, and digest, all you need to do is engage your vagus nerve. And the vagus nerve, it runs right through, right? So there's lots of things that you can do. I'm going to show you a few things that I do right now. One of them is simply taking a nice long exhale. So that whole thing where you like take a deep breath when you're angry, when you're here in fight or flight, that's calling up your vagus nerve right here to help you be peaceful. So take a nice deep breath and then see if you can exhale and double the time. Notice how you feel. And take again the breath and see if you can make your breathing come down all the way here to your belly, because we want to engage the lower half of our body too. So nice inhale and take an even longer exhale. Don't push yourself too hard. You don't have to be like an Olympic breather, you know? Just, I notice like I feel so much more relaxed already doing that. So that's one way you can engage your vagus nerve. Another way that I love to do it is by dancing. Turns out that I have accidentally, in this last month of dancing every single day, I have been up-regulating my nervous system because remember, my tendency is to be depressed and to feel lifeless. So it's not just the structure, I want to say, of the dancing that has helped me. It's actually the activeness of that, the social, consistent, but also like activation of my nervous system keeps me from getting into collapse. So because I've been dancing and moving every day, and it helps me because I have friends that I can do it with, I am sort of saved because I'm like healthy. I've got like a healthy rhythm in my life from the dancing that I've been doing. I've been very, very lucky to do that. So that is one way that I can up-regulate. One way that you can down-regulate is by singing. So singing is a wonderful, fun, pleasurable way to engage your vagus nerve because there's like vibration that happens when you sing. And maybe you're not a singer, you're like, I can't sing on tune. I bet you can do this. So this is called a vu breath. And I learned this from watching Peter Levine do his work, actually. Peter Levine is a trauma therapist and the founder of Somatic Experiencing. And he teaches his clients to do this. Just let VU, and see how low you can get it. And just like let it vibrate from all the way here. I feel really silly doing it in front of you, but just try it with me. You feel like I just shook like all of the yucky stuff out through my voice. Super fun, super easy. I like doing this when I hug another person. We're so weird. We like hug and voo together. Or you can do it by yourself. Okay, I am going to check my notes again because I have talked for a super long time. I know you didn't know that you were signing up for this. But I wanted to say that our nervous systems don't exist in a vacuum. Like when you look at the brain, the way that it's been developed is all geared towards social interaction. Like this whole thing about fight and flight is like, it's all about the outside world, about adjusting to the outside world. So we need other people to help us to find safety also. It's pretty much impossible to do alone. Some people are really, really good at regulating by themselves, but most of us need a lot of help. So if you notice that you're like really struggling and you feel like you just gotta grin and bear it and do it alone, I want you to invite yourself to think of yourself as like a really young baby, and you would never let a baby scream and cry it out forever. At some point, you would pick that baby up and help it calm down, help him or her or them calm down. So I encourage you to do that to yourself and allow yourself to receive support in some ways. I know that I'm a very prideful person and asking for help is really difficult. And I've learned that self-regulating, like doing this stuff by myself, it's just not a thing I know how to do. I've just, like I can do it a little bit, but I am a terrible self-regulator. I freaking need help, so I ask for it. That's why I've asked my friends to show up dancing with me every single day. That's why I have these social structures in place. That's why I'm very lucky. I have a partner who I ask to hold me. And I'm available. We're here, like, reach out, you know? Okay, what else did I miss? One more thing. If you notice yourself reaching for things, coping that you are really annoyed at, for example, one coping mechanism might be food. For some of you, it might be sex. For some of you, it might be drugs or substances of some kind. I'm wanting you to know that it all makes sense. Like it fits, right? Like oftentimes these substances or these things are our way of figuring out how to shift into the other one. We're like trying to help our body chemistry to shift in one way or another. And so if you're reaching for those things, be gentle with yourself. We all have systems and coping mechanisms that have really supported us and helped us in the past. And maybe they're not like the most upgraded version of your operating system that you wish, but it has kept you alive. So be grateful for those things, and as much as you can, find ways to replace that. I feel like I've said my piece, and I'm also feeling like I really hope that this has made an impact on you and that you learned something from my share. I'm just really, really grateful for you and the way that you are coping and dealing with this. And if you're not struggling, I totally love it. You know, for some of us, like, we are so attuned to times of danger that when our nervous systems are usually so hyped up that in a normal environment, guess what happens? We don't fit. So you know how I talked about, like, don't compare yourself. You think that I'm here right now. I'm doing really, really, really well in this time. But when things are normal, when things are like not that dangerous, guess what happens to me? I feel bored, I feel mundane, I feel lifeless, and I go into depression. Like, I have trouble answering emails on a normal day. But during a pandemic, I'm totally fine because, you know, my nervous system is attuned to like sort of a heightened sense of danger. So that's what's happening for me. Do not compare myself to you, because you have had a totally different set of experiences, a totally different set of mechanisms and a different environment. You don't see the invisible resources that I happen to have in my life, like safety in my childhood, lots of people, a husband I get to cuddle every day. Like, I have those things, and I didn't earn them. Honestly, I did not earn them. I was just really, really privileged. So be gentle with yourself. And I hope that you are going to look for things to be able to engage your body, not just your mind, because you can't tell yourself to snap out of it. You actually need to move your body. So if you're feeling like fighting, box it out, move it out. You know, if you feel frozen, shake it out. Shake, 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 shake your whole body. If you are feeling like kind of restless, take a nice deep breath. Engage this part of your body, your vagus nerve, and let like all of that sympathetic nervous system stuff just dissipate and calm down. All right, that was plenty from me. Please let me know what you thought in the comments and ask me any questions you have. I will do my best, and I can also link some of the resources that I have used that have helped me learn all this stuff. Love you all. Bye.